Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining this afternoon's webinar. We're here today to take a look at how IT Health are working with Osirium to work with kind of automating some of the tasks that a lot of IT teams are troubled with around AD management and risk. As always, just start off with a small bit of housekeeping. We're recording this session, so we will be sending you a copy of that recording after the event, so no need for any screenshots or anything like that. We will be giving you a survey at the end as well, so when the webinar ends you'll be served a survey. We'd really be grateful if you could complete that with your feedback, and probably most importantly, keen to get your feedback throughout the session, so please use the panel to post your questions. I'll be monitoring those throughout, and yeah, we'll put those to the speakers as we go through. So first of all, just a quick introduction to today's speakers. Hopefully most of you will know me. I'm Andy Sherratt. I'm from IT Health. Mark, I'll just let you say hello.
Okay, thanks Andy. Hi, yeah, my name's Mark Warren. I'm Marketing Director and Head of Product Marketing, here at Osirium. I'll be taking you through most of the session today, and then I'll be handing over to Wes for a demo later.
Yeah, so I'm Wes Revel. I'm the sales engineer that, as Mark said, will be taking you through the demo.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Wes. So yeah, I'm just here just to kind of moderate the session, really, top and tail it, make sure we're covering your questions as we go through. I do tend to just kick these off just to set the scene in terms of who IT Health are and what we do, just in case people aren't aware. So IT Health are NHS IT security specialists. So all we do is work with healthcare organisations to help them with cyber compliance, assurance, and yeah, we've been doing that for quite a long time now. Within that, we obviously work with a number of vendors and partners to help deliver those solutions. So you'll be familiar with a lot of these, I'm sure, on the screen now. Big area of work for us is the IT Health Assurance dashboard. So that's really going well and growing exponentially as we speak. So that actually gives us quite a good way of understanding what people's challenges are from a kind of compliance assurance perspective, which helps to shape our portfolio more widely. Also, again, a lot of you will be familiar with our two-factor authentication platform, Secure-It, which has been well deployed over the years. But yeah, today's session, as I said at the start, is all around how we're working with Osirium to help our NHS customers with task automation, basically. The relationship with Osirium is already pretty healthy in terms of the amount of deployments that we've now got in the NHS. So the logos on the screen are all IT Health Osirium customers, and all of these are live. Some of them have started with the automation side of things, although most of them have focused initially on kind of the more traditional use cases for PAM, so around securing that privileged users access and also for securing third-party access. But I think the automation piece is where perhaps you can take back some value in terms of kind of reducing some of your admin burden. So that's what we're here today to talk about. And I think that's probably a sensible time for me to hand over to yourself, Mark. Just bear with me while I pass you the controls.
Okay, this is where we offer up various kind of prayers and sacrifices to the webinar gods. And oh, it looks like something's happening. Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Andy. Yeah, so this should be a fairly tight session. I don't want it to drag on too long. We'll really focus on a couple of areas here, primarily around Active Directory management and why managing Active Directory is such a crucial capability and how it impacts not just security, but also performance of your IT operation in general, and also the quality of service that you can provide to your end users. Why that's difficult and how we can solve some of those problems, and we'll see some of that in a live demo, as I mentioned earlier, with Wes later. And I'll leave you with some recommendations from lessons learned and perhaps next steps that you could take. So let's just quickly introduce you to Osirium if you haven't encountered us yet. As Andy said, we are experts in privileged access management. So that's about controlling the access that people have to various shared IT services, databases, devices with administrator type accounts. And we've been around now since 2008 and publicly listed since 2016. Many well-known customers across a wide range of industries. And we've been working with NHS Trust and organisations for many years now, and this last year has really seen an explosion, especially working with IT Health. And we now have over 30 health trusts and associated organisations relying on us for PAM. And increasingly, they are starting to look at automation as well. And I've got an example of that coming up in one of the slides later. So why are we talking about Active Directory today? So it's obviously hard for me to know just exactly where everybody is that's on the call in terms of technical awareness of Active Directory, and I wouldn't like to pretend I'm a technical expert, but Active Directory is at the heart of just about every IT organization, especially those that have a lot of Windows devices in their estate. It is the central repository for all kind of user and device authentication and control over what services users have access to, and that's through various mechanisms, primarily through a structured series of groupings, organizational units that control exactly what access people have to which systems. So it is a very much this kind of core service that's the heart of everything that goes on inside IT. It's a key point of control, because this is where you can lock down a user account and say they can only access these devices, or they are allowed to access this application, or they are allowed to connect from this location, or other points of control such as that. But because it's the service that provides the identity verification for most organizations, so when you log into Windows, Windows is going off to Active Directory to confirm your username and password is correct and that you're allowed to log in. If something goes wrong with Active Directory, you can stop people from getting their work done. We probably all know or very familiar with the scenario of going on holiday for a week or 2 weeks, coming back and you can't remember your password, or you've been prompted you need to replace your password and you try 3 times with new passwords and you can't think of what your new password should be and your account gets locked up. This happens just so frequently that it kind of swamps the Active Directory, or swamps the IT help desk, because they have so many of those calls just dealing with those day-to-day kind of requests to unlock accounts or reset passwords. And we'll look at that. We've got some data on that from some research we've been doing, and we'll look at just how impactful those kind of operations are and why they can be really hurting your IT organization. Now, as I said, Active Directory is at the heart of everything you do, so it's really important that any changes are made quickly and accurately. And that's through a tool, primarily that's through a tool called Active Directory Users and Computers. So this is a management console plugin on Windows. It's not a particularly friendly environment. This screenshot only shows you the top level list of the kinds of groups that you might be dealing with and kinds of operations you might be performing. But because it's complicated and because the changes have to be made correctly first time, you really only want people that are very familiar with Active Directory making these changes. You wouldn't like to give this screen to one of your people out in the ward or in an office somewhere to try and change their own reset their own accounts, because this is just too complicated. And if you make a mistake, that could be really dangerous. You could disable a whole group of users from being able to log in, for example. So you really do need somebody that knows what they're doing if you're going to make these kinds of changes. Active Directory is also really critical when you think about how you prove your compliance. And in the NHS, clearly digital security and protection is, DSP is a key set of requirements, but it has very similar requirements to many other standards around the world, including ISO 27001, Cyber Essentials, PCI DSS, NIST 800, and many others. And I've just pulled out a couple of examples here from the DSP toolkit that talk about particularly managing user access to devices and systems. There's a link there on this page to a white paper we have, which shows you how you can map DSP requirements to privileged access management and to automation. But you can see in these examples that you have to do things like ensuring that when somebody moves between teams or leaves the organization, that any access they had to applications, devices, databases, etc., is removed at the same time as well. And you also have to prove that you're doing regular audits to make sure that people don't have creeping privileged access, or they don't have more access than they absolutely need to do their job. And that's hard for all the reasons I talked about before, with the complexity and the amount of work, just the sheer volume of these kinds of requests coming into the IT organization. So a couple of months ago, we conducted some research. We talked to 130 or so AD administrators, trying to understand from them what their particular challenges were, because that would help us identify how we could help out, solve those problems and make their lives a lot easier. So I'll share with you some of the findings from that report. You can get the full report online. If you want any of these, then drop a note in the questions or chat, and we'll follow up. Or you can go to your Osirium website and get them for yourself. When asking which Active Directory admin tasks cause the most pain, it wasn't particularly a surprise to find out that login problems was a #1 request. This is, as I say, the kind of situation where you've forgotten your password, or your account has been locked because you've tried to access too many times, that kind of thing. Joiners, movers, and leavers. This is particularly the provisioning access for a new starter coming into the team so they can get on with their work on day one, or removing access when somebody leaves a team or leaves the organization completely, disabling all their access. If you don't know what devices a user had access to, then you can't easily lock them out or remove those accounts. That's why something in this, like Active Directory at the heart of your infrastructure is really important to give you that single point of control. Group management is very closely related to that. Group management is how you define a policy that says members of this group have access to this application or to this device. So oftentimes that might be, people in this building have access to this printer. But if somebody joins that building, if they've not been moved into the right group, they may not have access to that printer. That stops them from doing that work, just as a trivial example. So yeah, login problems in many surveys always comes out #1 task for the IT help desk. Next, we've got how much time is spent on doing those kind of user and group admin tasks. And this was kind of interesting. 36% said that they spend, 36% said they spend more time than they'd like, and 9% said they spend way too much time. So there's a very substantial amount of people that are saying they're spending more time on AD, group, and admin than they'd really like. I suspect that the 47% are saying they're spending a reasonable amount of time. That's their job. That's all they do. And we'll see that in the next chart, because if you look at where the help desk calls are being resolved, only a minority of calls are resolved by the help desk on that first contact. 61% of calls have to be escalated up to second-line support, to third-line support, or to a dedicated Active Directory administrator, which is why I say that there is this group of people that say, well, actually, it's not too much, but again, that's their job, that's all they do. But that's quite an expensive resource if most of the time is spent just resetting people's passwords. And finally, in this kind of group of data, one of those tasks that I mentioned before, which is particularly relevant to compliance and for DSP compliance, is showing how often you review group memberships, who has access to which systems. Now, in a traditional environment, that would probably involve an IT administrator printing off a list of the members of a particular group, putting it in a spreadsheet maybe, and emailing it around, but giving that list to the owner of that group, who's probably somewhere out in the business, out in the remote office or in the trust, to say, we believe these people are in your group, so they have access to your systems. Is this correct or not? And then that group owner goes through, crosses out the people that shouldn't be on the list, spots that 1 or 2 others should be on the list aren't. They send that list back to the IT admin, and they have to kind of reconcile all those changes and make the updates in Active Directory. If you're doing that with tens or hundreds of groups or thousands of groups, that's just not a that's just not an efficient way of working. So it's no wonder that people skip those reviews, and we can see here that only 24% of the respondents say they review those group memberships monthly, and 7% said they never review them, and 20% said they only do it. No, sorry, 14% said they only do it once a year. That's not enough. People move between teams, sometimes daily, sometimes weekly, certainly monthly. There are changes in every team, so you've got to be reviewing those group memberships very, very regularly. And it's no, I'd say it's a very manual task, just like resetting passwords is a manual task. So all of these things just take time. They're error prone. Nobody really wants to do them. Now, the obvious answer would be that really you ought to be able to automate as much of this as possible. So you take out that manual effort, take out the manual error. So that's what we're going to move into now. But before we get started, I'd like to ask you, are any of you automating Active Directory management at the moment? So, Andy, if we can try kicking off that poll, please. There we go. So choose one of these that best suits where you think you are now. Are you automating most or all of your AD operations? Are you using some automation, but not for a majority of tasks? Are you not using any automation? But if you are planning on using automation, then tell us that. If you're not planning to use automation, then take that option as well. Just give people a minute to click on that, just to see where people are starting. We do have some data on automation adoption at the moment. It'd be interesting to see how the group here maps on. How do you think we're doing, Andy? Do you think we've got all the respondents in?
Yeah, we've got now 70% of people have voted, so that's probably, we could probably leave it there. There's not
okay, that's fine. Yeah, let's just take a look at see what that is then.
Oh, sorry, let's get rid of that. I was trying to pull up the results, but I don't want to.
I think it might get shared. It might get shared automatically when you stop the poll, I think.
Okay, if I close that, then.
Oh, no, maybe not.
Show poll. Okay, yeah, here we go.
There we go. Perfect. Thank you. So nobody said they're automating most or all. That's not surprising. That's okay. A quarter using some automation, a quarter using none, and half of you are planning to automate, which is fantastic. So that's good. You're a good audience for this session. Thanks, Andy. We can go back to the slides now.
Yeah, I'm glad that just about worked. Thank you, Mark. Back to you.
Thank you, Andy. Yeah. You probably have to click something, the magic button there, Andy, to go back to the slides.
You should have control. Let me just double check that.
Okay, I'm still seeing poll results. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Give keyboard a mouse.
Yeah.
Okay. You should be able to get back to the slide deck now. No.
No.
Okay. Hang on.
I've lost the mouse. Oh, there we are. Back to the slides now. Yeah.
Sorry.
But I've lost the mouse control.
Yeah. Yeah, no worries. You've got, I'll give you back keyboard and mouse, and
yeah, got it. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so those results aren't entirely surprising. I say from the survey we ran, 32% said they had some tools for automating Active Directory, but 2/3 said they didn't have any automation. And that's not a surprise. Automating Active Directory is not a trivial task. We saw how complicated the screens are for Active Directory. Various people have tried building homegrown kind of shell scripts, PowerShell scripts, that kind of thing, to try and automate some command lines, but they're complicated command lines, and you run into the issues with how do you control the credentials for the administrator that can run those commands. You don't want to be burying those credentials inside a PowerShell script that could be picked up by anybody else. So automation is pretty complicated for something like Active Directory. So this is where we're going to switch over now to start taking a look at something from Osirium, which we call Osirium Automation, which is our flexible automation environment for secure IT operations. And really, rather than spend too much more time talking myself, I think it's probably better if we actually show you what we could do, and then I'll come back and explain a little bit more about what we've seen behind the covers. So, and if we can switch over to Wes now, and he can take us through a short demo.
Yeah, sure. Bear with me. Okay, Wes, the floor is yours, my friend.
Right. Let me just see which one. Okay, I may end up sharing the wrong screen here, but we shall see, because it's not telling me which one's which. There we go. Is that coming
That's
through?
cool. Yeah, we've seen the dashboard, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So as Mark's explained, the main purpose of this is to make those tasks easier. It's also to allow people that don't have that extensive knowledge of Active Directory to be able to do simple tasks within the solution. So we'll start off with kind of the main one that Mark touched on, which is users being able to log in and troubleshooting that. So the first one we'll go through here is this task to unlock a user or to check the state of them. So if we click on Start, this will launch a GUI interface that can be customized to each of your organizations depending on what you want to do with it. So it gives you a brief overview by default of what the task is and what you'll need. And if we click on Start, it will take us through a nice, simple interface to be able to search for things. So we'll use this account as the example. And you can see here that it goes off to Active Directory without me having to know any of the credentials, finds the user account that I'm looking for, and tells me whether it is indeed locked or not. If it is locked, I can select the user record and it will unlock it. If it isn't, it will just come back and say it's not locked and return me to the main thing, to the task succeeded. From there, what we can do as well is in that same process is go through and be able to reset the password for that account. So if the user is still not able to log in, again, we'll click start off a task to do a password reset. And from here, we can select that same account, and it doesn't need to be the full account, it will search. So if I type in just Tom, it will search and come back with the relevant account. I can then select if it's correct, type in a new password, at which point it will also check the strength of the password that I'm putting in. And then again, go off to AD, perform those actions, and then let me know once the task is succeeded. Okay. So that's fine for the troubleshooting of tasks, but we also have the ability to be able to create users and move them around. So to create a user, I can click on the Create User task. And this goes through a very similar process. And again, this can be customized to your environment. But rather than me having to do all the details manually in Active Directory, I can just type in a logon name for the person. So we'll do that one. And first name will be John. And Smith. And then at this point, we can either automatically fill in an email address based on what we have, or in this case, it will be a manual email address. And then once it's happy with everything, I can click yes. And at this point, it will then ask me where I actually want to put that user. So this is an IT person. And verify that I'm happy with everything. And then I'll have to put in a new password for them. We'll use that one. And at this point, it will also tell me how strong that password is. And then at this point, I can add them into specific groups. So once I can go into here, I can either choose from specific OUs or select all the groups. And then this will list all the groups in the AD that I want to put that user into. So we shall just add them to domain users. And then once I've selected all the groups, they'll be listed here. Once I'm happy with everything, it then goes off and creates that user. Okay. So that's what we can do with creating new users. In terms of the audit side of things, what we can also do is start to see who actually has access to what devices and what groups they belong to. So the one that I'm going to do here is we shall view the users in a group. And this is something that can be kicked off at a regular interval as well to give you those checks. And I'm going to go for the domain admins one. And what we can do there is select either direct membership or nested membership. So what we do if we select all is it will show me the users that are directly members of this group, but it will also show me users who are nested members of this group. So belong to another group that then belongs to this group. So we can't see them directly normally. It's normally quite difficult to find them, but because of the way this is formatted, we can actually dig them out fairly quickly. Okay. So that's kind of the basics of how we can interact with the solution and the sort of basics of how we can manage what's going on in Active Directory. We can also do it the other way. So we can also do the users in a group rather than the group and then finding out which users are in it. And we can do things like the domain service accounts report. Now, the other one that Mark mentioned, I'm going to have to switch over to an actual AD user for, is review my group membership, review the group memberships. So this will give me a list of all the groups that I have management rights over, and it will then confirm if I want to make sure that those users remain in there or if they are indeed not going to stay in there. So I can manage this first line admins. And once I go through this task, it will then show me all the users in there, and I can simply select the ones that I want to make sure stay in there, submit it, and then it will show me that I'm still happy for all of those people to be in the group. But if I wanted to remove them, it would then notify the relevant people that those users need to be removed. Okay. Now, all of this is logged. So if we go into the activity pane and click on finished, you can see here all the tasks that are completed. And what we can also do is attach to them so we can see the results of those tasks at any point and go through exactly what was done in each of the tasks as it was sort of happening. Okay. That's kind of the basics of how the solution fits together. We can also, because these tasks are the default ones that are given, we can also combine any of these to create much larger tasks. And we can also do things like being able to create entire joiner processes that go through multiple systems as well, rather than just Active Directory. But that's kind of something that we can move on to at a later date. Mark, is there anything else you want to see?
No, that's excellent, Wes. Thanks very much, especially showing the audit trail there. Yeah, I think you covered a lot of the scenarios talked about before. Yeah, Andy, if we can go back to the slides, please.
Yeah, I can go back to the slides. Do you want me to capture a question whilst we're here?
Yeah, go for it, yeah.
The question is, are the logs only capturing for what's done through the tool?
No, so the tool itself can also work off any API integrations. So if something's kicked off as an API integration, we can also pick up those tasks and the activity will show the logs for everything, provided you've got the correct permissions.
Yeah, and I think there are two key things about the logging, which is really powerful and why this solution stands out. Well, one of the reasons it stands out. One is, if you imagine you could have a task that actually touches multiple systems. So we've only been looking at Active Directory in this demo, but if we were creating an account in Active Directory, the scenario that Wes talked about with a new joiner, you might create an Active Directory account, but you might also create, say, an account in a HR system, or you might create a certificate for a VPN access. So you're starting to touch multiple systems. In that audit trail that we saw there, you're seeing the entire end-to-end operation across multiple systems, and trying to find that audit trail looking in multiple different log files, wherever you may be, is hard. And you can also connect this up with your favorite SIM tool as well. So if you've got a logging tool, then you could log to that as well and use that for reporting. So lots of options there as well.
Just another question, I think we may as well have it whilst we're on the subject. Question is there a way to create or delete multiple accounts at a time? Yep,
so that's not a problem at all. The way that the system works is everything's based on a YAML script. So as long as you've got a way of inputting those multiple users, which would be probably something like a CSV export, it would have no problem at interacting with multiple accounts at the same time.
Yeah, Okay.
And you saw there as well, where it's just doing the multi-select. You know, you can apply an operation against multiple users at the same time, that kind of thing.
Yeah, nicely done. Yeah, I'll pass back to you, Mark, to carry on with the presentation. But yeah, thanks for the questions. Please do keep them coming.
Yeah,
Mark.
appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah. Come on, mouse, catch up. There we are. Right. So what we saw there was Osirium Automation. It's built on a platform we call Privileged Process Automation. It's all driven by this tiled dashboard. The tiles that the person sees is tied to their role. So there's a role-based access mechanism here. So as a group manager, that kind of review task that Wes ran there, as the group manager, I might only see the task that says review my groups, whereas the AD administrator can see many more tasks that they might perform. We've seen how all of this is being logged. We've seen how it's, just kind of follow the script, kind of automated runbook type things, but you could customize all of those words. You can customize the images to suit your workflow, your preferred terminology, all of that kind of thing. And importantly, all of those operations are happening within the automation environment. So at no time were the AD credentials ever passed back to the user. They never had access to them, so they can never be compromised. And that's true whether it's Active Directory or your Cisco firewalls, or it's your SQL database, whatever it might be, whatever backend systems you're working with. I thought it might be interesting to take a look at a live, well, almost live example. This is an ambient service trust that we're currently working with, who they've been deploying PAM, and they're now starting to deploy automation. They're targeting both the admin team, but also providing tasks to their help desk, so that help desk can take on some of these tasks that would normally get escalated. And here's a list of the first set of tasks that we've been working with them to create. So the kind of obvious things we've seen already, like unlocking an account or resetting a password, moving users between organizational groups and things. But you can also include tasks like clear print queue, or I think we've got on there, disconnect a user from a remote desktop farm. So, remote desktop sessions can be a security risk. You don't want them being open any longer than you want. So this is just a sample from a real live customer that we're currently working with. This is a very, very flexible platform. We've already talked about a lot of this. We've seen the Active Directory functions today, and we've seen it being driven by the PPA dashboard, the automation dashboard there. But as Wes said, you can integrate this via an API into your existing, if you've got an existing portal that you want to use, or you've got a service desk tool like ServiceNow, it could be any other one. You could drive the automation from that tool and get a full round trip audit trail back to your help desk tool, so that when somebody opens the help desk ticket, they invoke an automation task to reset the password or whatever. That audit trail gets put back into the help desk ticket, so you can close the ticket and have a full audit trail on what happened. At the back end is a very open, easy to build plugin architecture that can talk to any number of different systems via APIs, REST APIs, even by SSH and Telnet. Integrate with third-party vaults. You could use Osirium PAM for your vault, but if you don't have PAM, that's okay. We ship a copy of HashiCorp, but it could be any other password vault that you have. And it has a built-in task builder and editor. I think Wes mentioned YAML. It's a kind of low-code environment, so you can take these example playbooks, and there is an online repository of many, many more, not just Active Directory, that you can import for free. Use those as a starting point, or start building your own playbooks yourself, or we can help you with that. And you can test them, and then there is a workflow for versioning of those tasks that you can push them out for public use when you're ready, after you've been testing them, that kind of thing. And for those of you that already have Osirium PAM or are considering Osirium PAM, you do get 3 user licenses for free with PAM. So with PAM, you're licensed by the number of devices you're connected to normally. With automation, it's the number of users that are accessing the playbook. So you can build as many playbooks as you like, open it up to as many users as you like, and it's a very flexible way of deploying things. But the goal here is about being secure, about automating complex tools, complex operations for consistency and for proving governance and audit, and be able to, we'd say, shift left, move some of that workload off of those busy and valuable experts onto the help desk and even out to end users themselves, if you like. So coming to the end of our time here, I think, so just to wrap up, what we've seen there was Osirium Automation. We have a special package which has those Active Directory tasks that Wes showed you there. They're already pre-built and installed in Automation, so you can just download and start running with that with an evaluation license, or if you've got your free PAM licenses, or we can provide you evaluation licenses. There are 20 common Active Directory management tasks built in. So I would say start to understand just how your AD environment works, how many AD systems you have, and what's your current workload, how much time are you spending on those kind of admin tasks that you'd really rather not, then start looking at how you could automate those with Osirium Automation. And talk to us about, if you've got the questions, you've got tasks that you think you'd like to automate but you don't know if they can be covered or not, just get in touch. That's absolutely fine. We'd be happy to talk about those options with you. So with that, I think I'll wrap up. Have you got any more questions there, Andy?
Yeah, I do actually. Some have come in. So
okay.
The first one, I'll just do them in order. Is there any way to create? Oh no, we've had that one. Sorry. Does this tool tie into Azure AD and Exchange Online?
So yes, it can. That's not a problem at all. So it can have either a direct link with Azure AD using the APIs, or you can add in Azure manually as well. But it can also integrate with Exchange Online as well.
Okay.
And Office 365 if needed.
Next question is what's actually needed to run Osirium Automation? I'm not sure if that's come from an existing Osirium customer or not.
Okay. Yeah, it's a very simple, it's a pre-packaged virtual appliance. So you can install that into your preferred hypervisor, whether that's VMware or Hyper-V, or you can install it in, it's in the Azure and AWS marketplaces. So if you want to install it in a virtual machine on the cloud, that's fine as well. I say it comes bundled with HashiCorp for your secure vault. But if you've got another vault that you'd like to use, then we can integrate with that. And I say Osirium PAM is the other one that's out of the box in there as well, but you don't need PAM to get started.
Great. Okay, that makes sense. Oh, another one. I'll just try and read this one. In an example for creating a distribution list, can you put restrictions in when service desk use the tool? So yeah, basically, can you limit what the service desk can do around naming conventions and restrictions when creating the distribution list or group?
Yep.
Yeah,
so,
that's a really good. Sorry, Wes, do you have a go? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's not a problem at all. It's the standard ones that come in there are just kind of example ones, so it's very easy to edit those. And if you want to put in specific restrictions around each individual task, you can do that without a problem. It's literally just adjusting the YAML script, which we can either help you with, or you guys can do yourself if you're happy with doing the YAML scripting.
Yeah, absolutely. There was actually one of our very earliest adopters, somebody who was working with us kind of 2 years ago now, I guess, when we were building PPA, the Hospital Trust, as it happened, was it, or actually it was a university, I beg your pardon. And they were automating tasks around a software-defined networking environment, where they wanted to be able to create new devices, but the security around that tool was very loose. There was very little control over what you could do, and they wanted to impose some compliance standards whenever somebody was creating a new user or creating a new device. So, for example, they wanted a comment field to be particularly structured so they could do reporting later to say, oh yes, this device is in this domain or it's in this location, it was created by this person, and the change ticket was this number or whatever. Well, they could ask for that information in the automation playbook in the task, so that the task could then format the string and insert it into the tool, even though the tool didn't know anything about validating the content of what was essentially just free text. So you can build even more granular kind of controls and security around the tool by working on that automated playbook, even if your backend system doesn't support it.
Yeah, nice, good questions. I've got another one that's just come in. Thank you for these. So a bit of a comparison question. Whether you can answer this, how does it compare to Netrix? Is it more of an automation tool rather than an auditing tool?
Yeah, I think you answered it there, Andy. Really, it is more of an automation tool than an auditing tool.
Yeah.
There are certainly tasks you can do, like the kind of reporting tasks. Go off and find, all the users that are defined on this device, that kind of thing, and what permissions they have. If you wanted to do that, if you wanted to, we often get into these conversations when we're talking about automation. Can you do this? Yes, it's generally the answer. So if you were just using it, for example, for doing server health checks, is the server up and running? Is the website up and running? Then you could run those kind of health checks through automation as well.
Great. Yeah, Mohammed, I don't think we've spoken before, but it might be good for us to hook up with a bit of a one-to-one after this. I know Harps, your colleague, pretty well. Might be worth having a dedicated session for us to go through some of the questions and see if we can help you with a proof of concept or something like that. That looks to be all the questions for now.
There was one other thing that just made me think of there, Andy, as well, that I should have mentioned probably earlier on as well. A little bit of workflow around the tasks. We've seen somebody running a task from start to end, and that's great. But there are some times when it comes to this kind of additional security point, as a help desk person, and somebody's requested that they get added to a group, I might have to go off and ask the owner of that group for permission to add them to their group. And so we do have a workflow and a kind of approval workflow that's available within the tool as well to pass that task off to somebody to get notified via email or by Slack to say this request is there. They can come in and accept, or actually Teams, there's all sorts of options there, but they can review the request and accept or reject it, so that you do have these, you can have multiple tiers of approval as well, and could be an important part of your audit process to show that a request has been reviewed and approved by somebody before it's actioned. So I just want to drop that in as well.
Okay, there is another question. Thank you, Mark. I was trying to get my head around whether I could answer this or not.
Okay.
I'll read it out. It's do we know if it works with the NHS shared tenant for 365 and NHS Mail? I was trying to think whether, obviously.
Well, the dependency for the server to run is that you can host a virtual machine. So that's the starting point. After that, integration with back-end services like Azure AD or Active Directory or any other system is through the APIs that are available. Now, that may be something we already have through the Active Directory integration we have, or it may be something we can work on and customize. We'd have to look at that at the time.
Yeah, so I don't know if we're already doing it or not, but the theory behind that is as long as you have a admin account that's able to be used on that shared tenant, it shouldn't be an issue at all.
Yeah. So I think that should be fine, Mark, but we'll get back to you to confirm.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Nice one. Thanks, everyone. I'm happy to leave it there. There's no more questions. I think we've used up all the time. So just closing comments from me, really. As soon as I end the webinar, there'll be a quick survey. Really appreciate if you could fill that in. It's always useful for us to get feedback so that we can shape future sessions. We'll send a copy of the recording. Also, we'll clarify any questions and follow up with any one-to-one chats after this as required, really. And obviously, most of you know me. If there's anything in particular, just drop me a call or an email after this and we'll get back to you. But yeah, that was a great session, really interesting. Thank you, guys. Speak to you soon.
Brilliant. Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Wes. Thanks, everybody, for attending.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.